Now, counting and timing, in order to mix music together, we need to be counting, we need to be timing, but this is advanced stuff. This is really the stuff that I do and that my professional DJ friends do when we are mixing. There is no stone left unturned in this training. Now, the video you're watching now is the theory side of it, but don't worry, I'll keep it interesting. The following video is when we get the decks out and we're going to put into practice the stuff that I will be teaching you in the next half hour, 40 minutes or so. So what do we mean? What do we mean by advanced counting and timing? Well, it's keeping account of the beats and bars in the tracks that you're playing. As simple as that, keeping account of the beats and bars in the tracks you're playing. It's what you do when you're mixing. Whether you're manual beat mixing, sync mixing, whatever, it doesn't matter. In your head, this is what you're doing, and it's what all good DJs do. When we come on to the actual mixing, the practice video, we'll be doing it all the way through those mixes, and you'll see that actually in action. So why is it so important? Well, it's so you know where to switch to the next track. Without counting and without timing, you don't know where to switch to the next track in your DJ. It's the right way to cut out the gaps between the tracks. You know, all we do really, being flippant, all we do is cut out the gaps between tracks, right? We stop the silence. So unless you are counting and timing correctly, you won't know where to make those transitions. It's so your beat mixes and so your live remixing sound good. If you're using 2 decks or 3 decks or acapellas or loops and so on, and you don't understand counting and timing, that stuff is never, ever going to sound good. It's so you don't confuse people on the dance floor. People know instinctively how dance music works and where things are meant to happen. And if you're not respecting that, then you're not going to be a good DJ. And the only way that you're going to respect that is by counting and timing your way through your music. It's applying the rules of music production to the way you mix. Now, every person who's ever made a tune is living and dying by these rules, trust me. And if you're not respecting those rules as you're DJing, then you're not respecting their music and you're certainly not a good DJ. So I hope you can see already why counting and timing is such an important part of the art of DJing. So how do we do it? How do we master this counting and timing so that our mixing is flawless and our audiences are enthralled with our performances? Well, the first thing to do is understand how our songs are structured. Until we understand the structure of the songs, we can't move on to the second part, which is knowing how to apply that information to our mixing. So let's look closely at how dance music is structured. The first thing you need to understand is that all dance music follows a formula. All dance music. Otherwise, people couldn't dance to it. People need to know instinctively what's coming next. The structure is always there, even if the beats aren't. So intros and outros, ambient dance music, big breakdowns, anywhere where there might not be a beat, there is still an underlying structure ticking away there, waiting to kick in again later on. It's a fundamental. The second thing to take on board is that the vast majority of dance music is built around the rule of 4s. That means there are 4 beats in a bar of music, and sets of 4 bars make up all the main sections. The intro, the verse, the chorus, the breakdown, the drop, the outro, they're all made up of sets of 4 bars. So, in a lot of styles, house, techno, garage, tech house, all those styles where the songs happen over a reasonable amount of time, they're not crammed into a radio edit or something like that. The big things tend to happen in sets of 4 bars. A couple of sets of 4 bars, something will happen. A couple of sets of 4 bars, something will happen. So, some people refer to this as 8 bars. And, when we say things happening, we mean things like the vocal arriving or the vocal leaving, the bass line arriving or leaving, the main riff, the drums stopping so that the breakdown can happen, the drums coming in again because the drop's happening. This all happens after sets of 8 bars or 2 sets of 4, depending on how you want to look at it. Actually, in some songs and some styles of music, stuff happens every 16. I'm thinking really big, long, epic 12-minute trance tunes and so on. But generally, it's sets of 8 in that kind of music. Now, in a lot of music, things are more fluid between the 4s and the 8s. So there might be an underlying structure of sets of 8, but things happen every 4 bars. So, you might get a 2 or 3 minute pop edit of a song where every 4 bars, something big happens. It changes to a chorus or a rap starts or the beat stops or a riff is repeated or whatever. And even in songs where everything seems random and everything, I'm thinking again about those really tightly edited songs where within a few seconds you've hit the vocal and then the chorus arrives and then there's a bit of a drop drop and a break. And, even in those kind of songs, underlying that, there is a structure of 4 and 8 bar sections in nearly all of them. Now, there are very few songs, but still some, and it's definitely worth talking about, where those rules are not 100% adhered to all the way through. Let's look at those songs. The patterns are still perfectly decodable, perfectly there. There's something that would trip you up if you weren't aware of it. So the first thing that's likely to trip you up, and the most common by far, is where the producer has added in an extra bar of music, an extra 4 beats of music at a point in the song where they want to add an extra bit of tension before a big release. Now, this is normally at the end of a breakdown. So the song will build up and up and up to a breakdown, and just where it should kick in again, there's a kind of pause, you're hanging over the cliff edge, and then it kicks in. That is nearly always 4 beats or a bar of music, an extra bar put in the middle there. This is something that will probably only happen once or twice in a song, and you'll learn it very quickly in the songs it does happen in. It's not to be confused with the beat dropping out for a bar, or not appearing where you expect it to appear, but the structure's playing on underneath. They're 2 different things. And an easy way of spotting this is to look in your DJ software and see if your DJ software's grid lines or whatever, whatever's been right until that point, suddenly goes wrong by 4 beats or a bar. Another easy way of seeing whether they've inserted an extra bar or they've just done something weird with the rhythm is to count 4 bars or 8 bars and see if everything seems to be off by that amount when you've counted through a whole cycle. Now, far less common, but quite intriguing, and when you do find tracks like this, you're probably going to fall in love with them because they tend to be quite distinctive, is where instead of the pattern or the structure of the song repeating in sets of 4 bars or sets of 8 bars, the number of beats or bars that it takes before it repeats is different. For example, in the next video, we're going to show you tracks where the whole pattern repeats every 7 bars, and where the whole pattern repeats every 5.5 bars. They sound strange, but once you get used to it, it continues that way all the way through, and it becomes kind of second nature by the end of the track. However, you wouldn't really want to mix with them. We've got an example where the beginning and end has been made by the producer so that you can mix easily into it, where it is in standard sets that we're used to. But the very middle of the track is even stranger than those other 2. And by the way, all of these tracks that we've been talking about in this video, I'm going to show you solid examples of in the next video. So now we know how songs are structured, let's look at how to apply this in our mixing. Now, the principles are stuff which I've gone over before in training and which you will be applying already in your DJing to a lesser or greater extent. These are always lining up the sections of your songs so things start happening at the same time. In other words, you line up your 1 beats, your 1 at the beginning of a section of 4 or 8. What I call the SOS rule, SOS standing for something of substance. Any part of a tune where there is more than just a beat going on. There could be melodies, could be bass lines, could be chords, could be someone singing. Anything of substance, anything that people will tune into and will be enjoying, that is not filler, shouldn't be mixed with something else of substance in another track. In other words, if you've got 2 tracks mixing together, make sure one of them is just a beat or just something that's not going to distract from the other one, unless you're very careful about what those 2 things are. But a general rule of mixing is to overlap stuff of substance with stuff that's filler or not of substance. The third rule is to always tune in to the effect that what you're doing has on your audience. Now, DJing is as much art as science, and if you're not watching how your audience is reacting to your mixing, you're never going to learn what works and what doesn't. It's all very well knowing the formulas and applying them, but you've got to be listening and watching. You've got to record your sets and listen back to them and see what you think of them, and always be learning. And it's certainly a good idea when you're practicing your mixing and you're looking at how to mix 2 tracks together to start them in different places and to work out the mix that works, because only by trial and error might you find that killer mix where everything just knits together properly and you think, yep, I've nailed it. And that's the one to do in public once you've worked it out. So tuning into what you're doing and watching your dance floor or listening back to your own mix is vitally important in all mixing. So we understand the structure of our songs. We've got an eye on the ones that might be tripping us up, and we're adhering to the basic rules of mixing. The biggest issue, once you've got that lot nailed, is knowing where that damned 1 beat is in the tune that you're currently listening to, so you can mix the next tune in the right place. Because we've all been there, right? You're mixing away, it's all going well, you're halfway through a tune, you take your eye off the ball, maybe you're trying to find another tune, maybe you're chatting to someone, maybe you're just distracted by whatever. It's time to mix. You come back to your decks and you think, where do I mix? Where's the 1 beat? Where do I start the new song? I've lost count here, I'm off. Knowing where the one beat is the biggest single secret of doing good mixes time after time. Let's look in detail at how we do that. So the first thing is to look for audible cues. This whole structure thing is based around stuff happening on those one beats, stuff happening at the beginning of those easily measurable and definable sections. So we're talking about bass lines arriving and leaving, beats arriving and leaving, vocals arriving and leaving, big riffs happening. We're talking about whole sections of songs starting and finishing. If you can't tell the difference between a verse and a chorus or a breakdown and a drop, maybe you shouldn't be doing this stuff. They're not hard to spot, right? So the first thing to do when you tune into a track is, where are we? Are we in a breakdown? Right, well, when the drop comes, that's my one beat. Where are we? We're in a big verse. Okay, when the chorus comes, where are we? Well, there's a bass line chugging away. When that bass line stops and it's just the beat, that's going to be my one beat. There are big pointers to this stuff in the structure of your tunes. As well as that, there are little smaller fills and crashes put in by the producers to almost put a marker on the one beats. So there might be a little fill, one, that tells you that after that little hand clap, the one starts. And it happens every time. So once you know it, that's your sign that there's a one beat coming next. Or there could be a big crash on the one, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't happen anywhere else. So once you know that crash is coming, as soon as you hear it, there's your one beat. So the producers will quite often put flourishes around the one beat to kind of give you a marker, give you a clue that it's there. As well as those audible signposts to the one beat, there are visible ones. So if you're DJing with software, you've got your whole waveform view there. You can just look at your waveform. You can clearly spot where the intros and outros and drops and breaks and so on are. It's quite often you can spot every one beat that's worth knowing about all the way through your tune just by looking at that waveform. But not only looking at the waveform, looking at any other stuff that's given to you by your software. So software gives you a beat grid. There's literally a grid of lines over your tune which will show you, big important lines, big bar markers and just beat markers, so you can differentiate between the two. There's often counters. Pioneer DJ hardware has counters on it counting through at least the beats of each bar, so you know where the first beat is. There's lots of visual cues given to you by software and hardware to help you with this stuff. So working out what they are and knowing what they are on your particular gear is a big clue. User added clues to where your ones are a great way of doing it, especially on difficult tracks. So this is stuff that you've done in your preparation. And generally, cue points are the thing that DJs will use for this. You'll put a cue point down in your track before you DJ with it that says, here is the one beat near the outro that I want to mix out from. So as you're DJing, you're watching that cue point come in on your waveform. And when that cue point arrives, you know that that's a one beat. Without, you could in theory do it without even listening to the track. You will be listening to the track, of course, but that'll show you. Another way I've done it in the past, by the way, is simply through timing. It's simply through knowing that at a certain time in a track, and this often works with beatless tracks, 1 minute 44.1 or something before the end of the track, that's where I've got to start the next track. When we used to DJ with vinyl, quite often you would time the intros and outros and stuff to make that happen, and they took an awful lot of practice. But, if everything else is failing, just learning the exact time on your counter. But finally, just knowing your music is the ultimate one here. Now, the good news about this is that as you DJ with your tracks more and more, and as you become more and more experienced, you will just learn where these things happen. It will become second nature to you. And a lot of the tricks I've just talked you through are really the ones you'll be using when you're DJing with your new music, the exciting music you've just bought, stuff you don't know so well, and you're kind of like winging it on the fly. These are all going to be your pointers with music you're not so familiar with. But kind of the good news is that once you know that music well, this stuff is going to become instinctive. Okay, so I hope it wasn't too dry. There's our look at the theory of counting and timing. In the next video, the decks are going to be out from beginning to end, and I'm going to talk you through loads of examples. We're going to look at why they work, how they work, and by the end of that, you're going to feel empowered to do this stuff with your own music. Now, counting and timing, in order to mix music together, we need to be counting, we need to be timing, but this is a